This project started as this dream project when I was in the midst of the pandemic and I was just searching for creative outlets, and I started meeting with folks virtually and reading plays. And this play, Hurricane Diane, just dropped into my lap. So Hurricane Diane is this play by Madeline George, and it imagines the god Dionysus, which is the god of like revelry, pagan ritual, like drunkenness, coming back in the present day as a butch lesbian landscape architect. And she comes to a cul-de-sac in New Jersey to like foment a revolution to take back the planet. As theater reopened after the pandemic, I started meeting all these actors who had sort of interest in this way of working. And I thought, let's get everybody together and have this workshop where we just sort of explore and see what we can come up with. So I started thinking, what if we combine this way of working I really like in devised theater, making things really physical, really activating the bodies, and combined that with the script. I've worked on devised projects before where we make something totally new. We've never worked on one where we start with the script and we sort of mine that script and then use whatever we find physically to then produce the actual thing. So for instance, we've taken something called the grid, which comes from this movement form called viewpoints, where actors move just in 90-degree angles. They're thinking about how fast they're going, starting and stopping, playing with levels, seeing what happens if they run up and get really close to someone and stopping. And out of that, you get to explore and make some stuff. One day we took something called slow 10, which is this thing that comes from a Japanese artist called Tadashi Suzuki, where you're moving slowly, ever so slowly through space, right? And you have these moments where you energetically pass someone and you let their energy change you. So then we took that outside and we thought, what if we just let those bodies travel through the fronds and through the space? What happens? What if we see the feet moving through the earth slowly? What story does that tell? At the end of Hurricane Diane, there's this whole piece where the women get overtaken by the god Dionysus and they turn into these like animalistic people just shredding the earth. And the play ends with utter destruction and then this lamentation. We end up with this Greek chorus of women writhing in the dirt. When I was first dreaming about this project, I just had this image of like the hands digging deep in the earth and just like earth under the nails and just getting gritty. And so yesterday we dug with pottery in the dirt and we played with what happens if we're just rubbing it all over our hands. And so you need these moments that have little hints of the wildness. We need a way to build nature creeping in and taking over this kitchen. There's a stage direction where it says Carol, one of the main characters, is destroyed. How do you make that happen when you are working fast and light and with bodies and maybe in a non-traditional theater space? So in this workshop, we've been exploring all those moments. How do we make these big moments at the end? And how do we take them down to tiny little things? How do we destroy a body while keeping the actors safe?
Honestly, my expectations, I didn't really have that many. I knew that it was going to be a creative process, but I didn't know exactly what capacity. And I love the fact that it became this ensemble, collaborative, experimental body of work that I'd never been a part of before. I knew what I was coming into, but I didn't know exactly in what capacity. And it just became this like really cool body of work that we're all having input on.
It was so cool being able to explore the movement work we've been doing with more outside influences at play. Like when you're indoors, you pretty much just have the floor and chairs and maybe whatever props you may have brought. But outside, there's just so many things that can catch your eye and then can inform your next decision or inspire you to make a different decision than you would have made indoors. And I felt like I was always just learning from everyone and just absorbing these new techniques and new niches artistically. And so now, because of that, I feel like I have a much broader set of tools as an actor to draw upon, specifically with movement.
If I had to pick an exercise or one particular thing that we did, I would say it was probably the viewpoints and the grid work. Seemingly simple as it is, I learned how much there is to actually explore within it. Levels and tempo and being, going super fast in a group of people where you're like, oh my God, I'm going to crash into you. And then you don't, because you're all being aware of each other in this really beautiful way that hopefully translates to when you're actually in performance. It was really fascinating for me to see, without necessarily looking at text, there's so much potential for a physical story to happen on stage as opposed to just a verbal story, which is what we're largely used to seeing on stage a lot of the time.
Work like this isn't being done around here. This type of work is fully collaborative. We get to tell stories that aren't being told because we're telling the stories of our community. So we get to create something wholly new and interesting out of our lives. And I feel like right now, not a whole lot of people are doing that. So this adds that extra dimension of hooking into something that is sort of that universal unconscious.
I think the discoveries that we saw and just the differences and things that people brought to the project based on their own personal relationship to the material and to the script has been really fulfilling and fun.